All right, guys, I'm gonna give you guys a quick video. I'm in the middle of my work break, and luckily I'm working from home. So I want to talk about why Konami receives so much hate when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh. I hear it all the time in my comment section, saying people saying, "Hey, if you're not enjoying the game, just quit Yu-Gi-Oh. Hey, why you always complaining about Yu-Gi-Oh? Is this the sixth or seventh Yu-Gi-Oh is dying video? Yu-Gi-Oh is not dying, etc., etc." Right? So I just want to explain where the hate comes from to give you guys a little better explanation. First and foremost, I think most of us who make these videos understand Yu-Gi-Oh is 100% not dying, but it is on its deathbed, mainly due to the fact that the game has no kids in it, really, maybe very few. And when the game has no kids in it playing, that's when the game kind of falls off. Now, me personally, I don't care about the game having kids as far as me playing as a competitive player, but I'm smart enough to understand that when you don't have any new, fresh, young blood in any environment, no matter what it is, eventually, as the older crowd gets older, the game falls off and the game dies. I don't know any Gen Z kid, younger Gen Z rather, and or Gen Alpha kid that knows about Yu-Gi-Oh or plays Yu-Gi-Oh. And like I said, they are few and far in between. But that's not really where the hate comes from when it comes to Konami with Yu-Gi-Oh. It really comes from the fact of OCG favoritism. As long as I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh over the past 23 years, OCG has always had favoritism. The TCG and OCG formats are split. That is something that I believe shouldn't even exist anymore. I do understand that other card games split the format as well, but once again, we're in a worldwide game. We have the worldwide internet. Having a split between card games or games in general made sense in the 90s when, the internet really wasn't as popular. Now that we have the internet, now that we have people studying the metagames, now that we have a lot of different things going on in the world that allows us to connect with each other, there shouldn't be any reason why we should have splits. But the OCG favoritism doesn't just come from splits alone. It comes from the fact that they get way more transparency than we do. That's one of the biggest complaints from a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players, which causes fall off. For example, we just got an announcement yesterday that the ban list may come sometime in August. They gave us a really vague example picture on the screen. Of course, it's gonna be the main picture that I'm gonna use in this video. Probably not gonna add any other pictures because I am on a time crunch. However, with that being said, that's bullshit. And a lot of players are like, dude, what are you guys doing? Stop playing with us. At least give us a date, give us something. Now, there's multiple arguments on why we don't have a ban list yet. One of the main ones I seen from my boy Yugioh Pisano, shout out to him. I got this is a good argument, but I kind of disagree with him a little bit. His main argument was we don't have a ban list yet because it's actually good for us because Konami wants to see what Justice Hunter is doing in TCG and see how broken it is. They want to make sure they ban the right cards, but we can have a somewhat of a better format. However, once again, it goes to my argument. It's a worldwide game. Konami already know cards like Paradise is broken. It's OP. Like just because we have cards like Mitsurugi and a few crappy TCG exclusives like RB and our meta game, don't necessarily mean that we're not gonna have another tier zero stupid format where decks play on both players' turn, turn zero decks, etc., etc. And Konami kind of already know what cards are broken based on OCG alone. It's not like they don't have access to the same stuff that all of us fans have access to. And I'm not really gonna give them any credit for that. I just see it as they probably don't want to give us the ban list just because they probably don't have one ready, and also the OCG has to approve it, which once again goes back to OCG favoritism because out in the OCG they get ban list announcements. They know when everything's gonna happen. They also don't have to deal with a lot of lack of transparency when it comes to different things over there as well as far as rarity bumps. Now, as far as back to the ban list part real quick, they already know when their stuff can get hit, so they can kind of mentally prep and go from there. But when it comes to TCG, it's always really vague. We used to have it back in the day, but once Konami split from Upper Deck due to the stupid stuff Upper Deck was doing, that kind of caused Konami to run things in the TCG differently than the OCG, which is kind of crappy. Now, as far as blatant rarity bumps, this is something I don't know if when Yu-Gi-Oh came to the US, maybe some you guys can educate me. It was Konami's idea 100%, because Upper Deck was running the game, and American companies they're always profit, profit, profit. Unlike in Japan, where they actually think about the player, and they also find out other ways to get profit. That way, everyone could be happy. But nevertheless, whoever thought of the idea of rarity bumping everything when it comes to the US to make profit, they need to burn in hell, in my opinion, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of players get priced out of the game currently. One thing I hate about Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've always hated about Yu-Gi-Oh, is blatant rarity bumps. Like back in the day, during the Dark Arm Dragon format, Dark Arm Dragon was $300. and this is back in like the early 2000s. And you needed three to play the best deck. That effectively priced out tons of players from the game, players who probably had potential to be the better than the pro players at your shop, but they just couldn't afford the cards. They got priced out and had to play lesser powerful decks, which in turn gave them worse tournament results. While in the OCG, I think Dark Dragon was a rare. And there's multiple cases of this happening. Nowadays in the OCG, they kind of follow a Pokemon format of making cards, from what a lot of people told me, where they print cards in multiple rarities. So if you can get the high end card and it's an alternate art, you still get cards that's worth money. Collectors can collect that, high rarity horse, things like that. And they also have the cheap version for us budget players that out there who don't want to pretty much spend a king's ransom for a card that we kind of need for the metagame. I believe that most charmers over there are rares and or super rares, which are extremely dirt cheap than the secret rare bump that we have over here in TCG. Like in my personal opinion, Konami just have a lot of outdated business practices that I think is currently biting them in the ass right now. One of the main outdated business practices is just the lack of transparency, the rarity bumps. Like, look at other card games. Cards are easier to get, and the cards that aren't easy to get, they like once again they go back into the whole alternate art things like that. Outside of outdated business practices, man, have you guys even tried to log into like the Konami website to like just get tournament information? I don't know if it's just me. Everything is like hella difficult. I go to YCS, go to event details, just try to see what the price structure is. No information on price structure. You literally have to dig through the website just to find anything. And then on the Japanese side of the website, you now that they're making you use now to just to check your standings to make sure that you don't have any infractions on your personal Kazi ID account. You have to use a Japanese website, which is also just as difficult because if you have an older ID like me, who's been playing forever, your information is just not gonna pop up automatically. You got to email Konami just to get it all figured out. Outside of outdated business practices, it goes into things like them forcing the player's hand of Time Wizard, like literally trying to force players to play a new format of Time Wizard, which is an alternate format created by players to push their time travel format, and they're threatening OTS stores to take away their OTS status if they don't follow by those rules. Like, who in the right fucking mind in 2025 would pull that shit on a game that's kind of already in the decline from a social standpoint? Obviously, the numbers don't lie. Like, in-person numbers are going to be different from sales numbers. Obviously, Yu-Gi-Oh still makes money. The property Yu-Gi-Oh is not going to go anywhere anytime soon, but it's a very niche game that our big events still don't crack 3,000 players consistently. We barely get there on our national event, and most of the players are there. They're all old heads like myself, 30 plus, mid 20s, things like that. Obviously, you get the younger 20 guys, but for the most part, it's just a lot of people. Another outdated thing that Konami does, in my opinion, when I go to these YCSs, my boy B, YGL Paisano mentioned this in an older video he did. It's just the actual layout of the place just looks so depressing. It's hella basic, very minimalist. I think even back in like 2012, when I went to my first nationals in 2012, it was way nicer. They had like nice plushies. It was pretty dope. They had like little balloons, like little Yuma things. Nowadays they really don't have. I mean, they have a couple of like cutouts, but it's really like cheap if it makes sense. Like they had like a little player area at the national thing where you could play games and things like that. But it just looks like they put no thought into it. It looked like it was given to somebody to do, and they slapped it together in 5 minutes just to like get it out the way so they can go vacation with their family on a weekend. So a lot of things they do is outdated. And the last thing I want to talk about is a lot of people, one of the main reasons people hate Konami as a company in general, because we already know their main focus is pachinko machines. That's how they get most of their monies, and they are known to pretty much give up on their franchises. One of the main franchises they gave up on and kind of screwed the creator over um, on is the Metal Gear Solid franchise. If you guys don't know that information, check it out. I'm not going to give you guys a history lesson, but a brief synopsis is I think the guy wanted some more money or something like that to happen. And Konami just pulled the plug on the franchise, even though the franchise is very popular in Japan and in the US. I guess they just weren't hitting the profit margins they wanted to hit, and they decided to shut it down. Other Another franchise that was really popular about Konami that they just kind of fumbled was Silent Hill, but that's kind of like an older niche zombie game. That's more of like an arcade shooter. But Metal Gear Solid was Konami's original bread and butter, and it was like one of their flagship games for a while. I think I'll argue now flagship game for Konami is Yu-Gi-Oh, but once again, look how they're treating Yu-Gi-Oh, especially with the TCG. OCG is treated a little nicer, but they still have a lot of things. And obviously, the last outdated thing is just them not doing cash prizing, but It is what it is. They did increase the price structure, which is what I'm happy about. However, with that being said, I think in order for the Yu-Gi-Oh to actually start gaining more new people, they need to do a lot of things, which I've done tons of videos on, so I don't want to go over that a time and a time again. But yeah, man, this is just a short video. Like I said, I want to give you guys my thoughts on why people are giving Konami a lot of hell and making a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Design videos. Let me know what you guys think. Hit the subscribe button for more. Check out my channel sponsors in the description down below. Make sure to hit the Discord as well in the description down below. All right, and I'm out. Peace. You guys have a great rest of your day.